Here we're doing a simple landscape, starting by sketching out the main elements. It's always good to start with the ground, about a quarter of the way up the frame on this one. The rocks, you can see the house starts about halfway and is about half the size of the grass. You can also choose to sketch the house very perfectly or a little bit messily. However you choose, it'll add some kind of emotion to the drawing. So if you choose to do it quite loose, it'll feel a little bit more whimsical. If it's all very perfect, it'll have a different feeling. Same with the tree. When I'm sketching trees and plants, I like to let my pencil roll between my hands so that I get these organic movements like that. I think it looks more natural, personally, for the shape to be a little bit jaunty. So same for sketching in the canopy of the tree, just rolling the pencil and moving it across the page, roughly getting in that shape. All right, that'll do. The colours that we've got are sky blue for the sky, this lovely orange colour for the roof, green for the grass, but that is not the right green, and this ochre colour for the rocks, but again, it's not quite right. A quick way to get these two colours looking more accurate is to create that neutralizer colour. So we mix all the colours that we have together. Get a bit more of the ochre. So mix all of those together and it should give us a brown colour. So in theory, if we add this colour to all the colours, they'll look more harmonious because there's a bit of every colour in each. And also they'll look a little bit more realistic because they'll be less bright. So mixing a little bit of this colour into the green, we get this lovely olive colour, which is pretty close. And let's try it with the ochre colour. That's not bad. For the tree, it's a little bit darker. So I'm going to take some of this dark blue, mix it with the green. And then add the neutral colour to it. See what we get. I think that's good. I think the tree has a little bit more orange in it. And we just go back and forth, mixing colours together until we find something we're happy with. So a little bit more green, maybe a touch more orange. So that's looking a bit closer to black, which is good to know because that will come in handy when we're doing the shadows. So that color was mostly the orange and the dark blue mixed together. With a little bit of this green. If I add a little bit more green into this one, I think we'll get a color that looks pretty good for the tree. Oops. All right, so let's start out by painting the sky in. It's a very smooth blue gradient. Mix up some blue. Now, because I don't want to have to wait a long time for this painting to dry, I'm going to try and do the background wet on dry. So usually with these sky gradients, we'd put clear water on the paper first and then paint our gradient wash on top of it. I'm going to try and do it in some smooth gestures. So let's see how I go. So the trick with this is to move one row at a time, but move relatively quickly. You don't want to get any lines forming between your layers, and not to go over a section once you've done it. So I'm not moving back up here, I'm just moving down the page side to side, adding some more water to my brush. As I get down here, it's going to be a little bit trickier because I need to go around these rocks and around the house. Try and keep the brush horizontal, side to side, not vertical. All right, there we go. While we wait for that to dry, we can do the grass, which was this green and some of that neutral brown mixed together. I'll just mix it all together. Can always make that neutral color again. So same as the sky, starting from the bottom and going side to side. This is the one danger of watercolor, is not having enough of your color mixed up. Let's see, that's there we go. So I had to move quickly because if that layer dried before I had that extra color mixed up, there would have been a harsh line. And this, the parts of this image that stand out the most are how smooth the sky is and how smooth the grass is. The tree is smooth, the stones are smooth, everything's got this smooth quality to it. All right. While we wait for that to dry, I'm going to mix up the colors for the other elements of the painting. So we've got the orange for the roof, but I mentioned that neutralizer color, so I'm going to make up a lot more of that in case I need it again. So bit of green, bit of blue, bit of ochre, a little bit of orange, all mixed together. I'm going to mix a bit of this orange in with the neutralizer colour. I think that's a better colour. It's subtly different. Can put a little bit more of this ochre in as well. See if that lifts it a bit. Yeah, I think that's got a nice warmth to it. And similarly, I'll go a bit of the ochre, a little bit of this brown mix, and see if this is going to work for our rocks. Just diluting it down. We add a little bit of this grey into it. Yeah, I think that's getting a bit closer. And this is looking dry enough to keep going. Just make sure you keep sticking this down to the table if it peels off. So I'm going to paint the rocks first. First is the light wash. So it's an amount of paint that's almost barely there. And I can use the same mix for the tree trunk. I'm going to switch to my larger brush for the tree. So I've got this lovely green that we made up, but you can see it's been taken up by the brush. Grab a bit more of this dark colour, and I'm just going to dot it onto the shape. And what this is going to do is it will leave some gaps for the sky to poke through. So staying within the border of the shape that I drew and just tapping that on. It's amazing how much paint gets used up. A bit more of that black, and can dilute it down a little bit more. I'm keeping my brush pointed in the same direction as I do this so that the marks look intentional. Alright, that's layer one done, and can do the same down here for the bushes. Just smaller marks. And I'm going to fill these in because you're not seeing any sky through them. Even though they're getting filled in, it's still worthwhile to do this tapping motion because it leaves behind an uneven, so as opposed to the sky, which is perfectly smooth, tapping the paint on like this, it leaves an uneven texture, which is what we want. And I can come back up here into the tree and tap the areas that have a bit of shadow in the picture. So we're not painting individual leaves, we're painting shadows and shapes. Your shadow color should be a little bit darker than the original color used for the tree. So I'm going to make up a little bit more of that, the green, the dark blue, the green, and the orange. So the reason I'm mixing orange into this and not black for the shadow is shadows are often best represented by using the complementary color mixed with the color of the object. So for this would be red. Red is opposite green on the color wheel. So we mix, this is close to red, this orange color. We mix that color with the green and it gives us this lovely deep color. So I'm just going to keep tapping. You can notice the marks that your brush makes. And try and vary the silhouette of the tree. It's very easy to do straight lines. So I'm just looking at the image and looking for any other shadows in the tree that I can pop in. Don't worry about making the tree exactly the same. This is about focusing on the consistency of the shadow and just enjoying the process of putting the paint on the paper. So the rocks have dried, we can add the second layer to them, just taking some of that neutral neutral color that we made from mixing all the other colors together. Popping that on. Just painting the patterns that are on the rocks. Just going to switch to the smaller brush for this. Taking that same neutral color and doing the same thing to the tree. So just letting my brush tap along the trunk. You can see in addition to the bark pattern, there's a dark shadow that's falling on the tree. So mixing that dark blue and orange together with a bit of the neutral color, and go in and just drop some shadows onto the trunk. You can also add some more branches at this point in that dark shadow color. Just thinking about where the branches would be. I can also drop some of this dark color into the tree itself to suggest where there might be branches that are covered by the foliage. And this shadow is also appearing on the rock, so let's go ahead and pop that on. And there's a little bit of this shadow in the bush here, and this bush as well. Just roughly tapping like that. Next step is to paint the house, to paint the roof. This is still a little bit wet, so we're going to leave that alone for a second. Looking at the picture, you can see that there is a orange light that's falling over everything. There's a couple of ways to achieve that. One of the ways is to do an orange wash, a gentle orange wash over the existing painting. So I'm going to do a light wash over this grass. And try not to paint too many times. You only get a couple of goes at this before the paint underneath starts to lift. So that just slightly warmed it up. If you want it even more warm, add a little bit more of the orange and ochre colors while it's still wet. I'm just drying the brush off to get any of that excess paint off so that it lays nice and flat. You can see that's like warmed up the grass a lot. We could have mixed that color in from the start and tried to make that color. It's a pretty hard one to make. It's pretty subtle. So it's easier to just go approximately, you know, we know the grass is green, put the green down and then you can tell there's an orange light over the whole thing, so then you can put some orange over everything at the end. And we can do that with everything else in the picture too. So once the tree is dried, you can put similar orange wash over the tree, over the rocks, over the house. So we've got this ochre and orange mixed together for the roof. Can go in and, oops, that part of the roof is white. I can go in and put the orange down on the roof now, using my little brush because it's a small space. And this is pulling the puddle, so I put some paint down, and instead of dipping back into my pot to paint the rest of this, if I can see that there's a section of paint, a little puddle has formed on the page, I can just pull it across into the areas that I need it. This bit, just trying to clean up this bit that got some orange on. I also went over the line with the blue, so I can take a clean brush and just do small circles to try and erase the paint from this area, just soften it up a little bit so you can't see the blue on the house as much. Chimney, I'm going to just use some of this neutral colour, making sure this is dry before I pop this chimney colour on. Can use this black colour for there's a shadow on the house itself. And a little window. Just gonna dilute that colour down and continue the shadow around this side. So you can see what I'm doing here with pulling that paint onto dry paper, just spreading it out evenly. I go a little bit darker with this shadow. And there's a little, excuse me, there's a little shadow down here as well. And then there's a shadow on the roof. Before I paint the shadow on the roof, I'm going to build up the color of the roof a little bit more. I want it to look really vibrant. Now I need to be careful about these sections that are still wet. Okay, I just blow dried that quickly to speed up the drying process. This might not stick as well as a result, but it's definitely sped up. It's a lot drier now. So I am ready to do the shadow on the roof of the house. Talked about shadows being the opposite, shadows having some of the opposite color in them. So I'm mixing a little bit of blue with the orange. Blue is opposite orange on the color wheel. And just bringing that shadow down to meet up with this one. There's also a little bit of shadow on this side of the house. So just using the same shadow that I used, same color that I used on the other side of the house for that one, but I'll just lighten it up a bit. And then we can start to add some little details. So taking the black color that I used over here and just adding some small lines for eaves. Looks like there's a door. It's really up to you how detailed you get at this stage. If I was to leave it like this, it would be a stylized portrayal. So that's fine to leave it as is. If you want to get more detailed, decide what level of detail you want to go, and then make sure you've got time to apply it to the whole painting so that you don't end up with this part, you know, the painting quite detailed and the rest of it doesn't have time to be finished. I'll mix some of this black with this neutral color and just splotch it onto the rocks to give it another layer of texture. Looks like there's some kind of moss or just the rock seems to get this kind of lighter green color as it merges with the shrub. So I'm going to add that in, maybe mix a bit of this neutral color in. And then the last thing to do is to decide if I want to bring this orange warmth into this tree as well. And I do, because I can see that there's this lovely warmth all through here. There's oranges, and then this tree doesn't seem to have any orange in it at all, or at least not as much as the grass does. So making up this orange color, this is a lot, but I think it'll look great. And just being very careful to avoid the holes that I've created in the tree for the sky to come through. And as you're applying this, you want to just give yourself one pass. This is called pulling the puddle. I've got paint on the paper and I'm just grabbing it and guiding it down. And eventually it'll start to run out. But I can pick some up once I run out, pick some up from elsewhere if there's a lot in one corner, and I can come over and deposit it somewhere else. So that's looking like it's starting to run out. I'm going to go and grab a little bit more. This looks very bold, very orange right now. Once the whole tree is covered in this, our eyes should adjust and see the tree is green again. But because it's half orange, half green, both of the colours are looking super vibrant. So we're seeing the orange really clearly and we're seeing the green really clearly. So down here will be the hard spot to put the orange wash in because I was tapping the leaves in. But just take it slow. Mix up a little bit more orange and ochre. All right, there we go. I'll just let that dry and let the orange and the green sort of settle. And I can do the same down here. And I can do it onto the rocks as well. Now this is something we could have done at the beginning as an underpainting. So artists will often do what's called an underpainting if they want to get a certain warmth, like a color temperature into the artwork. So this artwork has a kind of a golden feel to it. So we could have painted everything with this orange color first, and then except the sky, and then painted our image over the top. So I'm just checking for any last things that I might want to add. I can make this shadow on the rock a little bit more intense. The last thing to check when you're painting is contrast. In terms of our checklist, contrast is always the last thing that you want to pay attention to. So making up my most vibrant color and just popping it down like that as a shadow, and a little bit on the tree, up in here. There we go. Again, let it dry. You can always go back in and add more. Make sure you're not adding more, like any more, if you add layers, make sure they're not gonna clash with the colors you've already got. So for instance, if I want to add more to this rock, I'll just keep working with the oranges and the browns. I wouldn't start putting like a blue color over the top because that would start to muddy it. I think at this stage though, less is more. We're done. Let it dry, and once it's all dry, you can take the tape off. Just be very careful when you take this tape off to do it at a right angle. Make sure there's a little triangle formed like this as you're taking the tape off, and then it won't rip. Ideally keep the tape on while it's drying, so that'll preserve the flat shape of the painting. look good. All right, there we go.